For the keynote, let me welcome Sri Chintan Vaishnav, Mission Director at Atal Innovation Mission and Chair, Startup 20 Engagement Group under G20 India Presidency. Chintan's interests include creating socio-technical solutions for improving human conditions, especially those resulting due to gross socio-economic inequities. His exposure is the right mix of innovation, strategy, regulatory policy, and engineering for the emerging communities. You will be happy to know that Chintan is kind of a reverse brain drain. He is on leave from MIT for a stint at India. We need more of this, sir. Welcome, Chintan.
Thank you very much. How much time do I have? Just so I clock myself right.
I
I
think
think
we will set
we will
out a
set out a
timer.
timer.
It should
It
be
should be
around 12
around
to
12 to
15 minutes.
15 minutes. Okay, fine, great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Nasscom, and friends out there. Greetings to everybody in the audience. It's a great honor to speak to you all. I know Nasscom, very action oriented, is doing wonderful work in unpacking this area called the DeepTech. Let me bring you a perspective from the Atal Innovation Mission, which, as you know, is an umbrella body for nurturing and taking forward the innovation ecosystem of our nation. We sit inside the Niti Aayog, which is the planning body. As was mentioned, I was also chairing the Startup 20 engagement group of the G20 this year. As you know, we were very fortunate that all the leaders agreed to make this a permanent feature of the G20 as we go forward. Today's conversation is about deep tech, and I realize that this is placed in the session called ecosystem and empowerment. So let me first speak to the idea of ecosystem. As to how we are thinking about it at the Atal Innovation Mission. Um, ecosystem, as you know, is a word that gets thrown around in many different contexts, and oftentimes is not really defined very precisely. When I go talk about ecosystems in, say, in schools of villages, for example, I often have this challenge of all these children I'm talking to, and I'm trying to describe to them the ecosystem, right? So generally, I am the metaphor that I've found useful is I will always ask them that, if any of you wanted to be an actor, what would you like? What is the first thing you would do? Most of them often would say, I'll go to Bombay, I'll go to Mumbai, right? And I'd say, why would you go to Mumbai? So then they start giving me all these things about, oh, there are writers there, and there are other actors, there are producers, and there are directors. And I said, yeah, that's exactly right. That's the ecosystem, right? So for the innovation ecosystem, the way we are thinking about it at the Atal Innovation Mission uh, is to uh, is to say that uh, uh, i- an ecosystem is a working ecosystem when all the actors that need to be there for that ecosystem to be complete are there, are stable, and their interdependencies of these actors is dependable, right? Their interdependencies are dependable. When we get to that point, that's when somebody nails an idea, the ecosystem scales it, right? So if you nail a search algorithm, ecosystem turns you into Google. If you nail a social network algorithm, the ecosystem scales you into a Facebook, or what have you. So those are the ecosystems we're trying to build. There's another word I was asked to talk about: accelerating the deep tech product growth. Um, I tend to think that uh, there's quite a spectrum when one thinks about the deep tech. And the way we have come to think about the sort of the highest end of that deep tech spectrum, where we will have to get to over time, is um, a deep tech is one, um, at that purest end of the spectrum. A deep tech is one where the process of creating a startup itself leads to creation of new knowledge. The process of creating a startup itself leads to creation of new knowledge. So for instance, Moderna, which created the vaccine, is a deep tech, uh, and it created new knowledge of how vaccines of mRNA type of vaccines can be created, combining various hypotheses and so on. Now, that's the sort of the holy grail. When we come back and we start thinking about deep tech, where there is a great deal of technological complexity, there's a great deal of often scientific uncertainty, there's a great deal of interdisciplinary complexity. Those are the places where deep tech originates. And I think what we have come to presently accept as deep tech may be more diluted than that picture that I'm presenting, but that's where we are headed, is the way we think about it. What I want to do with you over the next few minutes is, I want to show you some pictures. Look, I want to get into this conversation by accepting that we have a long road ahead when it comes to deep tech, right? But we are on our way. That is also for sure. So the question is, where do we stand? How do we measure it? What next we need to do? So let me first show you some pictures of where the ecosystem stands, right? So here's the startups picture. So about 100,000 startups in this picture, 99,693. It was drawn about a week ago, this picture. And about 110 unicorns, where I put 108 plus because the valuation goes up and down and the number keeps going a little bit plus and minus. And the third largest ecosystem, right? In this picture, the darker, the more number of startups. And you see that some of it is possibly not a surprise, but when I show this picture to people, they say that perhaps Uttar Pradesh is a surprise. Look at how dark it is, right? So about 10,000 plus startups. That's the startup picture today. I tend to say that we are about 1/10 of the way. In about next 10 years plus, we will have 1 million startups. So that's where we stand. We could talk about that number if you have questions about it. Uh, uh, now, what is leading to this, right? We may be the only country where there's the largest movement of doing something, sensitizing school children with the idea of innovation and entrepreneurship. So if you look at the Atal Tinkering Labs picture, this is what it looks like. You can see that you can pretty much see what India looks like with this picture, right? 10,000 labs, maker spaces in schools, 10, 6 to 12th grade, about 8 million students sensitized, about 1 million plus projects already done, and so on. So this is kind of is what is creating the pipeline. Uh, the depth of this pipeline, I have to share with you that uh, this is still a lot of modular level uh, innovation work. Okay, this is not very deeper innovation work. So for instance, if you got hold of an Atal Tinkering Lab student, most of the students would build you a prototype of something if you gave them the modules. But if you told them, can you build a PCB from scratch, they will say no. So we have to deepen this ecosystem if we want to do more deep tech, right? Let me show you the incubator picture. This is the incubator accelerator picture. If you look at Startup India's web page, There are more than 1,000 today, but I've said more than 900 because there's some duplication. There's also some exuberance. So people have registered an incubator, but activity is not yet there. So, but 900 plus, we can say they are there. What is interesting is that they're both public and private. So about 500 or so are public, with government supported. Rest of them are private, and the real indicator of how this ecosystem is moving forward is that a lot of the early ones were sector agnostic. But now there are more sector specific sectoral incubators, including recently in the Department of Atomic Energy, there was a sort of the photonic research based incubator that's just getting launched. That is deep tech, right? It will be deep tech. So I think we are moving in that direction. All the sector specific things are closer in some ways to deep tech also. Um, if you look at how, of course, fueling all this is the number of higher educational institutions. I want to stay with this map. Patents filed. You see which states. If you look at 2014 to 22, this is what the number of patents filed looks like. Okay. Again, you see that a lot more in the south, and as compared to the rest of the country, and so on. So, uh, just a few maps about where the nation stands. Now, let me. You also know that our ecosystem stands on the shoulders of many giants. So, at the central level, you have NSTEDB in the DST, which started in the 80s, building incubators, BIRAC in the 90s, MADI Startup Hub, the IT digital sector activities in the late 90s, 2000s. That's also closer to Nasscom, Atal Innovation Mission and Startup India in 2016. IDEX, which is defense centric more recently, that came out of Atal Innovation Mission. And then there's a whole bunch of state level work going on. I'm not capturing all of it, just a few examples and so on. But this is where this is what the ecosystem stands on. Now let's get into so what needs to be done, right? In terms of the deep tech, the one thing that I don't know if you appreciate, but only about 0.6% of India's startups are hardware startups. In other words, our deep tech conversation is also still limited a lot to software and digital. Obviously, the universal set of deep tech is beyond just software and digital, right? So, at Atal Innovation Mission, that's the space we have to play in because the market is not fully playing in it. So and the way we have to do it is to make our runway longer, right? So today you do see up to grants, the sort of angel, series A, that type of money is easier in India. Series B, C, D, E, all of that much harder. That I think that we have to change. Second, uh, 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 translation from our lab. If you go to our CSIR labs, some amazing translatable science, but not really coming out into deep tech. We have to change that, right? Uh, in fact, 2 years ago, we ran an experiment called AIM Prime about a year and a half ago, where we took uh, science based potential startups at TRL 3 or 4 and really intensely handheld them through a program of 9 months to have them jump about a 1.5 to 2 TRLs, have them raise capital, have them file IPs, and so on. We realized that for science and hardware based startups, deep techs, it'll need a lot of intense handholding and money. That's the next step for Atal Innovation Mission, something we have proposed that we will do. The other thing, which I think is happening much better in digital and software land, which is not happening in hardware land, or is happening much less in hardware land, is the industry startup osmosis, right? So uh, ideas, they're like two soda water glasses standing next to each other. In either industry or the software land, you can come up with an idea, you can become big, but there's no osmosis between them. We have to change that. So that's the next set of programs we at Atal Innovation Mission are proposing. Uh, so in big picture, those are two things: make the runway longer, increase the osmosis, are the two directions that we will be working on. Now, let me now finally end with a few more um, pictures. These are recent pictures. Nobody else other than you have seen them. So I am really being a little risky in showing you these pictures, but I'm excited about it. So I'll share it with you. And I will end in a couple of minutes. Okay. So think about putting number of patents filed on one axis, on x-axis, and number of startups on y-axis per state. This is what the picture looks like. Now look at uh, Tamil Nadu, right? Tamil Nadu, lot more patents, fewer startups compared to it. What does that mean? That means lot more knowledge creation, but fewer knowledge-based startups, right? Look at Maharashtra. It's more on the sort of the diagonal. So anybody below the diagonal is more knowledge, less startups. Anybody above the diagonal, more startups, possibly. There's nobody in the top left corner. Otherwise, one would say these are startups, but not IP based startups, right? Now you see a whole cluster closer to the zero, where zero cross is there. Let me zoom into that. So if you have if I look at startups that are if I look at startups anywhere between 100 and above, then about 2000, sorry, on x-axis, and sorry, let me stop, pause for a moment. Number of patents about 2000 per state on x-axis, number of registered startups on y-axis. This is what the figure looks like, right? Here again, here you see that there's a lot more correlation. So possibly again, many states, their IP is correlated with number of startups, right? That uh, may be expected. um, if you go to between 100 and 2000 number, because there are many small states or smaller activities, on x-axis patents, on y-axis startups, you see Madhya Pradesh in that bracket, again on the diagonal. You see Jammu and Kashmir and Bihar, that's on the top left ish corner, which means these are less IP based startups. They may be Me Too startups. And so from the deep tech perspective, we are clearly more interested in the uh, on the bottom right side, right? Uttarakhand, for instance, more IP, even the number of startups are less, but there's more chance of a sort of a knowledge based startup there. Now, if I go to 0 to 100, again, they're also even smaller, a lot of the northeast places. There you see Tripura has a number of patents, but fewer startups, and so on. So again, the point is that I think we will, for deep tech, we will have to zero in on uh, intellectually intellectual property focused places, and take them forward into this journey of startups that have higher degree of uncertainty, they have longer gestation time, they need more money, so that we can bring them out. That's the kind of program we're hoping to build next. Let me end by sharing a couple of thoughts. First, um, G20 delivered something very important for startups. If you read the 18th paragraph of the New Delhi Leaders Declaration, it said, "We recognize that startups and MSMEs are natural engines of growth. They are key to socioeconomic transformation by driving innovation and creating employment. We welcome the establishment of the Startup 20 Engagement Group during India's G20 presidency and its continuation." So now startups have a platform to ask world leaders what it is that they want and what is it that they should ask for. Uh, Startup 20 said that we want to raise the annual investment in global startup ecosystem to $1 trillion annually, which is about 2.5 to 3 times what it is today. And that is the first thing we should ask for, because just take this anecdote. If you look at the top 40 startups, deep tech startups of the world, and say, ask what is the average investment in each deep tech startup, that number is 75 million US dollars per deep tech startup, the top 40. That number, $75 million, is larger than Atal Innovation Mission's annual budget. That's deep. That's the deep tech we're trying to build. Okay, thank you so much.